Hey Buckeye fans, welcome to the Columbus Wired post-game recap. I'm Andy Evans. Thanks for coming along for the ride, and an interesting ride it was today, as the third-ranked Buckeyes take down the Arkansas State Red Wolves by a final score of 45-12. Some things we may have learned, maybe not. I mean, I know this was Arkansas State, right? The 119th ranked team in the country playing out of the Sun Belt Conference, a non-Power 5 school. However, the Buckeyes definitely looked a little better today offensively and really didn't look like they skipped a beat defensively, picking up right where they left off after last week's win against Notre Dame. So let's take a look at some stats. Offensively, total yards, Buckeyes posting 538 for the game, 370 through the air, 168 on the ground. Of course, those 370 through the air largely on the arm of starter C.J. Stroud, and the 168 largely on the legs of both Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams, whom it looks like they're both going to be splitting carries, at least up to this point in 2 games into the season, right? And C.J., 16 out of 24. Okay, maybe a little low as far as the completion percentage is concerned. He was 24 of 34 last weekend against Notre Dame. He's 16 out of 24 today. However, 351 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and much like last weekend against Notre Dame, he only took 1 sack today. 302 of those yards, however, going to 2 different receivers. You know who I'm about to mention, right? Mr. Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. Egbuka, 4 catches, 118 yards, and had a 51-yard touchdown catch right down the middle of the field right here, completely untouched over the middle. The offensive line and Travion Henderson picked up the blitz perfectly. Stroud stepped up in the pocket, found Egbuka over the middle, off to the races he went, untouched for that 51-yarder. Harrison, 7 catches, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns, and this 3-touchdown performance today now makes Marvin Harrison Jr. only the 2nd receiver in OSU history to have at least 2 games with 3 or more touchdown catches. Think about that for a second. The only other guy who has at least had 2 games with 3 touchdown catches in a single game was Joey Galloway, who did it against Michigan State in 1993, and then he did it the very next season against Purdue in 1994. So Marvin Harrison Jr., you're in pretty good company. Be sure to check out Marvin, CJ, their interviews on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel coming up here in just a little bit. They're going to talk about that amazing performance. Something that CJ also said in his post-game presser, kind of shocked, said they need to run the football more. 168 yards once again on the ground. Travion led the team with 10 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. Williams backed him up with 8 carries for 46 yards. So my thoughts personally, it was an impressive performance by the offense today. I know that they didn't look as crisp last weekend, but they were playing a pretty darn good Notre Dame defense. I think you're going to see later in the year that 21-10 victory last weekend is going to look pretty good. And it's not like CJ had a completely horrible game, right? 223 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions and only took 1 sack. I digress. I realize today's defense probably not going to be nearly as good as Notre Dame, but still a pretty darn good performance that the offense put on. I would certainly say a confidence booster, to say the least. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, allowed 276 total yards, 223 through the air, 53 on the ground, no touchdowns, which now makes 6 straight quarters that the Buckeyes have not given up a touchdown. In fact, they've only given up that one. That was last weekend against Notre Dame in the second quarter. So Steele Chambers, Cody Simon, both led the team today with 6 tackles apiece. Chambers also had one of the team's 2 sacks, the other sack going to Mike Hall Jr., who had 3 tackles in the game, All 3 tackles were for loss. He did go down, and afterwards Ryan Day did say he's okay, he's fine. They just kept him out for the rest of the game after that as a precautionary measure. There was no need to kind of throw him in there and risk possible further injury. So he did say that he was okay, but they're going to continue to evaluate him, make sure that he's all right for next weekend against Toledo. Overall, the Buckeyes, 12 tackles for loss. Cody Simon had 2 of those tackles for loss. So a great game, once again, by the defense. Some people might say, yeah, but they allowed 12 points. Well, think about it. They didn't allow any touchdowns. That's all right in my book. I thought this was still a great building block to go upon, and you can see Cody Simon and Steel Chambers interviews on our YouTube channel and Facebook page coming up here a little later on this evening. So there you have it. There is your Columbus Wired post-game recap. Once again, I'm Andy Evans. Appreciate you guys coming along for the ride, and until next weekend at Toledo, or should I say at home here for Toledo, we'll see you then.